welcome to The Trumpet, the official podcast of Elephant Room Productions. As always, I am your host, Robert Jean Colecchio, in a slightly new location today. Just recently moved my office, so apologies for the disarray over this side of the room. The tapestry is hiding a cat that likes to hide, so I wanted to give her a little safe space. But before we jump into the main, I want to give a shout out to our artistic director, Lauren Krebs, who gave me express permission to keep her in the background of every Trumpet episode going forward from our production of The Shape of Things. But we have a really exciting discussion on deck today. This is kind of a follow-up to an earlier episode this year, Casting Against Race and Gender, which Latrice Smith and Jonathan Alexandratos really knocked it out of the park with. We had a lot of really good conversations about that. And as the summer went on, and as this incredible conversation about race and gender in theater has evolved, I wanted to take a look at a different side of it. Now, this is normally a theater podcast, but I wanted to really focus on the acting end of it today, because I think we made a lot of valid points in our Casting Against Race and Gender discussion, but a kind of added element that has now come to the table is voice acting, casting against race and gender, and when and where it is appropriate and inappropriate, and how we kind of go forward. So I want to welcome on today Mariza Esperanza and Connor McAndrews. Oh, that's the wrong layout. There we go. This is also my first time using StreamYard. So thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today.
Yeah, happy to.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Anybody else bring a cocktail? Or
yes. A glass of wine handy. Cheers. Hi.
I thought about wine, but I decided to go with beer. One, I wanted to keep the Elephant Room Productions logo in the forefront, and
represent.
And two, just mild venti rant at the top. When your day includes a customer leaning around the plexiglass and pulling down his face cover to yell at you, I think a beer is warranted. So moving on to happier.
No.
I know.
Most certainly, yeah.
So first things first, before we jump into our discussion, Mariza, I know you've done some readings with us before, but I don't think you've ever been on the podcast. And Connor, I know you have not been a guest before. Would you like to take a moment and give a little intro and kind of say something about your theater background? Whoever wants to jump in first.
I think
Mariza, do you want to go?
you started talking.
Sure.
So
Wait, hi. Hello, everyone. I'm Connor McAndrews. Broadway World nominee Connor McAndrews. I'm an actor in the greater Philadelphia area. I've done a lot of work on stage. I have a big soft spot in my heart for musical theater, but also very much love animated series, as Robert and I have talked about backstage during our one time doing a show together, and otherwise, in passing as friends. So great. I'm very pleased as punch to be here, and I can't wait to share thoughts and feelings on this matter.
Great. And Mariza?
Hi, I'm Mariza Esperanza. I am also an opportunistic actor in the greater Philadelphia area. I don't do it often, but when I do, I love it very much. And full disclosure, I have not done any voice acting before, but I know a few people that have. My fiance does it. That's what that setup is for, but I have not used it.
Look at all that recording stuff.
But it's like fancy like microphones and stuff. But yeah, no, I'm glad to be included in this conversation, Robert. Thank you for having me.
You got it. So yeah, I guess going back to what I said at the top, what prompted me to want to talk about this is Jonathan and Latrice and I had a really meaningful and interesting conversation about, stage and film casting against race and gender. And that was kind of the middle of the summer. That was right at the height of this, incredible, moving national conversation that has obviously ramifications well beyond theater, but our entire industry did have to take a close look at ourselves and say, what are we really, doing all we can do? Are there practices that we can, go back on or, adjust? And what I started to see was more and more actors from film and television in animation started speaking up about this subject. And well, first things first, I want to avoid any kind of blanket generalized statements through this discussion, but I think it's fair right off the bat to tip the hat to we're not talking about BIPOC performers playing white characters. That is not the same. And I think if, anybody who has used that argument thus far, oh, well, what about this actor playing this character? Sorry, buddy. It's not the
same. No, that's not the point here. No.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess I'll just kind of open it up to, just a general thought to both of you. What are your general thoughts about casting against race and gender, specifically in regards to voice acting? And is it, what are some ways that casting against race and gender is different when it comes to voice acting? And what are some ways where some of the same intentions and challenges are the same?
I don't know. I have been mulling over this all day. Yeah. I think there's a pretty hard divide between casting for race and casting for gender. I mean, because there's been this huge kind of social and entertainment, artistic reckoning with, looking back on, there are many iconic performances that are definitely, a white person doing the voice of a BIPOC character. I mean, like you look at, I watched a couple episodes of The Simpsons today just to like get an idea,
just to get into the mode,
because like that's to get in the mode and get into like that really is one of them. That like that Hank Azaria as Apu, who like since has apologized, and and it's one of those things that in the moment it seemed right, and it's fun in its own way. It's like it's it's like they have an ensemble cast of characters. He's not only Apu, he's also Chief Wiggum, and he's Mo, and he's Dr. Nick, and like all these other amazing characters. It just so happens that like Apu so specifically is very insensitive to the Indian community.
I think it's also interesting that like there are you bring up The Simpsons, and Simpsons is probably going to be a focal point of a lot of these examples. There are many
without a doubt
of The Simpsons,
and there is, and The Simpsons is, I think it's not like the ultimate animated series, but it really it kind of broke the ice for anything. It changed animation from seeming like something for children to something for families.
Yeah.
And yeah, it really, and I would dare to say every animated series since The Simpsons, you see so many shades of The Simpsons in it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, groundbreaking, I think is the word I was looking for, not ice breaking. But yeah, it's like and even in the episodes I watched, I don't know which Treehouse of Horror it was, but it's the one with Groundskeeper Willie as Freddy Krueger.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's an incredible episode of animation. You've got that, and it's the attack of the 50-foot eyesores, and it's Homer in 3D. But the fact that even itself kind of is parodying the patricianness of so much of society. That right, like Groundskeeper Willie is on fire because of the boiler that got turned up, and he bursts into the meeting. And as he's like on fire, nobody is paying attention to him. And they're like, Van Houten has the floor. And he's like, I don't want my child having 2 spaghetti meals in a day. That like, it's in the writing how ingrained, I don't know, I think The Simpsons speaks to this, to a lot of the society that, I don't know, looks away major issues. Especially, I don't know, it maybe just kind of in the 90s, that was also in the same episode. There's the attack of the 50-foot eyesores. That the solution to it is just look away. The solution to it is just ignore it, and it will stop. And it's like, oh my God, like that is the issue.
What about you, Mariza? Any what are your? I mean, again, like you're coming at this from strictly a straight, the experience of working on stage and film. But do you, what are your thoughts on casting people? And not just BIPOC performers, like there's also the constant let me see if I can find an example. How do I share on this thing? There we go.
Master.
Part of this episode will also be me figuring out how this works. There is, of course, the famous people like Linda Belcher, and there's a lot of home movies characters as well who, the voice is iconic, and some have argued that, are we taking away, a role from a female performer to have this male actor play it, or does this voice just fit the character? So what are your general thoughts, just off the bat, on
thinking about like animation, like it is, the setup is very different from theater, is because it's your character is completely animated. They can look however they want. They don't have to even be human, and like you just need someone to lend their voice to it. But at the same time, I think there's two sides of like an animated character. So you have the voice and the person who does it, and then you have the actual character and what they represent. So I think there are instances where there are characters that their depiction, their actual animation might be what is problematic. And then on the back end, there are some instances where it's the person that is playing them is problematic, So I think in order to address the issue, you have to address both sides, because like with voice acting and like, Hank Azaria, as you're saying, voices more characters other than Apu. Like I find that's pretty normal in a lot of shows where like, a lot of actors will have the opportunity to play minor characters, or like they can put on a new voice and do it like a different character, but then you have like a bit character. Is it a problem if there's like a stereotyped bit character that's voiced by someone that doesn't match the ethnicity? Like kind of like I see there would be a problem in that case, especially if the stereotype character is kind of it's not like a great depiction of them,
Right. And we lost Connor.
Oh no.
Connor, come back. That's okay. I guess we'll just, there he is. Hi.
Sorry. Yes. A package arrived at the door. I have new kitchen towels, everybody. It's very exciting.
Hey.
Oh my God, that's incredible. So then I guess, going off of that, we've touched on Apu, and we've touched on Linda. I guess,
have thoughts on Linda. Can I share them?
What was that?
I have thoughts on Linda Belcher. May I share them?
Go.
Okay. Well, the thing is, again, like I was saying at first, that like I think there's a much harder divide between race and gender in this idea, because I think in performance, in opposition to Mariza, I think voice acting is very theatrical. That you have to go really above and beyond what is just your own human being to create these characters that are so much more larger than life. And maybe it's because I have a lot of experience doing musical theater and children's theater. So I have played things like pigs, and I've played lunch ladies, and like things that are like not something that a little 5'6" character actor would normally do. So like, so I personally think, especially a character like Linda Belcher, the history behind that, right? John Roberts based the character on his mother, because he famously made those videos where he is impersonating his mother, doing the Christmas tree and doing Mother's Day. So that like,
my son is gay.
Comes from something greater than himself, creating this character of Linda Belcher. So it's not just like a man was cast to do the role because it's funny to hear a man playing a woman. He plays it with all of his heart because it comes out of a very heartfelt place for him. And I think that there is, and the other thing is, in opposition, Bart Simpson is voiced by a woman, right? Like Timmy Turner is voiced by a woman. Like it's not, this isn't the first time in history that has happened. This just happens to be like a very good, very like a focal point of like, where's the line here? Like what could a female identifying actor have played this? Yes. However, what's right for the character, it really feels so right that John Roberts does this voice and does it so well.
Yeah. Like especially gender is interesting, because you think it's like, you want to think that you approach this like subject in black and white. Like it's not really. Like the reason why like little boys in animation are voiced by women is because like the pitch of their voices are more similar than if you were have a grown man like voice like a young boy. So you can't just be like, oh yes, you must be a woman to, you must be a small boy to voice a small boy part. I was like, that's not really how voice acting works. Like that's not how, like,
Right.
Yeah.
like
And it
our
fits
voices
better
can
into
be.
and it fits better into kind of the vision of the show, I think, that like Bob's Burgers is a little more kind of off kilter than The Simpsons. It's more like, it's not as cartoony, but then you do have these like, right, these characters who, again, like Gene Belcher is voiced by a grown man. And then also Tina's voiced by a grown man. So like,
Well, I think also the
it's not
interesting
that there's-
thing,
Right.
the interesting thing with Tina is, Tina was originally written to be Dan because Dan Mintz plays him. And it was after hearing his voice that they decided, they didn't cast a male actor to play a female character. It was after his audition, and even the pilot, it was a male character. And
it's
something
on YouTube,
about his
isn't it?
voice.
There was no pilot with him as Dan. Yeah.
So I guess, going off of there, I was, the next kind of part of the intro of this would have been, we touched on Apu, we touched on Linda. What are some other characters in animation that have made a significant impact on pop culture, whether or not for better or worse, that have not aligned with the actors who played them? I think those are, in terms of this conversation, I think those are the two kind of most, easy to grab on characters. But
yeah.
I think the one that comes to mind initially, and one of the ones that I think I realized like really early on in life, was Darth Vader being voiced by James Earl Jones. And like, I think it's like this idea that I found out that it was voiced by James Earl Jones, but then like, people would kind of have this stance where like, did you know it's like voiced by a black man? I'm like, sure. Like that's like, I didn't really think about it. Like, yes, Luke Skywalker is white, and so is Leia, and you take off the helmet, and the
David Prowse
guy beneath is very powdery and white, and David Prowse, right? But like, it's this idea that like, it's not like, I'm not looking for like the person under like the helmet. I'm not looking at their skin color, like it's the voice lends itself so well to the character who's like a demonic robot wizard man,
And chances are Emperor Palpatine knew that Anakin was a weenie and wanted to turn the nodules on his voice down. So it's like, we'll make him sound like a dark, impressive Sith Lord rather than Hayden Christensen.
Yeah, and he's got this apparatus. Like, let's make him like this dark, like broody voice. And like, who do you want? Like, who do you know that has that voice? It's James Earl Jones. Like, yes, hire him.
That was done in post. Apparently, the actor who played Darth Vader delivered all the lines. They just put it on YouTube of him actually doing it, and it's something.
And
you are a spy to the Rebel Alliance, and you will be. Oh, it's so uncomfortable.
Take her away. But and James Earl Jones didn't even want his name on like in the credits. Like they're like,
he didn't get credit.
I don't want to step on Prowse's toes. Like I just I came in because you guys wanted me to kind of overdub this part. And and that's cool on his part, but
I'm glad he did get his due eventually.
Right, but like like his voice is, and that's another thing, like another issue is that when you have a character voiced by a celebrity, where it's really hard to not see that celebrity in that role, like it makes it, I think, more difficult, Like,
well, the thing is, at the time, James Earl Jones was like up and coming, right? I think he'd done even Fences at that point. He was just like, he was working actor James Earl Jones, who happened to have this majestic voice.
Actor,
yeah. Wow, that one really got me. You took me by surprise.
Yeah, but
I was delighted.
So we touched on, just kind of dip into kind of the good and the bad of this is, we actually kind of already have naturally gone into the good part. Like we have, the specific characters who have made a significant impression on yourself or on pop culture, who have been cast this way, and what they brought to their role. I had forgotten actually until you brought it up, Connor, about Linda's or about John Roberts' mother, and that being the inspiration. But in the interest of, just not pussyfooting around an uncomfortable topic, are there any other characters besides Apu, but we can definitely touch more on Apu if we need to. Are there any specific characters that you can think of who the character or the presentation of the character has been hurt because they were portrayed against the actor's race or gender, whether it's going into stereotypes or any,
I mean,
if we're talking about gender. Yeah,
I've been rewatching Scooby-Doo, Where Are You on HBO Max just as like a little time filler. Because I enjoyed it as a child, but there are so many racially insensitive episodes. Because it's just like almost every episode's like, what's the flavor of the week? Like this one's set in Chinatown and that one's set on an Indian reservation. It's like, oh my God, why does Casey Kasem have to do the voice of every nationality of person across America?
Oh, I'm remembering this now.
It is painful and cringeworthy.
Well, because it's not just Casey Kasem. Like, it's not just them doing the mysterious old monk that welcomes the town. Like, sometimes it's Shaggy
also
himself.
Scooby and Shaggy begin doing a whole racial drag of
let's do something about Mugu Gai Pan with chopsticks. And
yes, exactly. It's X color face of whatever the flavor of the week is, and it's like, oh
you just reminded me of a lot of Scooby-Doo episodes I'd forgotten about.
And
they're all on HBO Max, and it's
that's the idea where even if you it wouldn't fix that problem if they got an actual minority character to voice them, that's where the front end is that's the problem. It's not necessarily it is a problem if who voices them, but the problem is it's how the character's written, what they're actually depicting, and that's where things can change.
It's a combination of many ills there that because it's also the fact that they're they had a small cast of people voicing it, so they weren't about to hire out new people. Because literally Casey Kasem does the voice of every old man and Shaggy on the show, and it's and what's his Frank Welker, right, who's legendary voice actor, is Freddy, and then is the voice of every handsome young man who walks by, and it's okay, great. There's 4 people in the studio creating everything. Yeah.
Dip out of animation for a quick sec, but Mariza, you just reminded me of my favorite instance of someone making horrible racial writing actually work without changing the text. It was is anyone familiar with the stage adaptation of Around the World in 80 Days?
I might know where you're going with this, but continue.
Yes. Is it the one? Is it the one with 4 actors or 5 actors?
Yeah. So it's it's there's the core. And then there's
you got
3
2, and then there's there's 2 or 3 people in the ensemble.
Yeah, there's 3 clowns, and my partner Sean was in that show a few years ago, and there's a point where they're going around the world, and they get to China, and the person that they meet in China is very, very much the 1970s style talking the slow voice and whatever, and holding his hands like this, and the way and Sean had to take on that part for that scene, and because it was a farce, and because it was very much played up on the fact of these are the same actors playing things in rep, the way he was able to save it was he finishes the scene, does the bow, and as he leaves turns to the audience and goes, sorry. For those of you who are listening to this podcast, he's mouthing, "I'm so sorry," but putting his hands up.
I saw that show, and I was in the audience, and I gave a little gulp clap, and it's just these little things where you acknowledge, even a play that's been already written, and you have text there, but what can you do with it to make it, pretty much updated?
I think that's the important thing. It's what do you do? Because you have an interesting dilemma there. It's do you let's all just kind of agree that there are certain plays and films and animated programs that are examples of their time, and it's not necessarily worth throwing the whole script away because of a problematic thing, but you cannot, I don't think we have the luxury of being able to blow past without acknowledging those problematic aspects of those mediums.
Yes, this sort of white solidarity and xenophobia that is inherent in a lot of American writing.
Yeah.
That, and also for me, that brings you to this point, this thing that I've just been like mulling over, because it's been a long couple of months since March, since the world shut down, and I love the theater so very much. But I just feel like, is there any show relevant enough that we need it back right now? Like, the theater must rest. The curtain may stay closed. I don't need to see Clue the musical right now. As much as I'm sure it would be a treat, let it rest
Sidebar,
until
though,
this global pandemic is over.
Sidebar, Clue the musical is a great script. It's bad, but it's great, and I love it. It's just, as camp as it is, it's one of my favorite, like, lesser known musicals.
Yeah. Sure.
But no, I definitely, I see where you're coming from. It's, you know, I think there are also like, I also respect, you know, and I forget if we touched on this in the casting against race and gender episode, but you know, there's shows like Lend Me a Tenor where the playwright himself has come in and gone, you know what, you're right, this shouldn't have been in the first place, so we're sorry about this. Here is so you don't have to figure out a better way. For those listening who are unaware, a big, you know, the big thing of Lend Me a Tenor is someone has to go on for an opera version of Othello, which means he's in blackface, and the actor who's originally supposed to play the character also gets in costume and makeup, and it's a lot of, like, you know, mixed, you know, identities and things like that. Honestly, there really was no reason for it when the play was written, but there's absolutely no reason for it now. And
it was written in the 80s, right? Like, it was written at a point at which blackface was frowned upon.
Like, we all kind of knew. Like,
Yeah.
at that point. Like, so, you know.
And there's there's like one decent joke at the beginning of it, because, right, like, Max, the, like, young man who's, like, kind of frail, wants to do it because they're like, whatever, what's his face can't perform, and he's like, I got it, and the director's just like, Othello, big black fellow, I just don't see you in it, Max. And it's like, great, there's one joke that's funny, otherwise it could be Figaro and no one would know the difference.
And that's what ended up happening. It was they changed it to, was it Figaro or Pagliacci, I forget.
One or the other,
whatever it is, it's the clown opera. And it's like, because the only joke that is necessary for this farce to exist is that the character is in makeup, and having white clown makeup on is infinitely better for the time the play was written, and definitely for now, than having to do blackface on stage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, then I guess, you know, to kind of wind us down, you know, going back to voice acting, we have had a lot of conversations with theater about where we as performers go from here. Where do we go from here in terms of film and animation voice acting? Are there still instances in this culture where non-white characters can be voiced by white actors, or should we just be done with it? And I want to also add that, you know, the couple of the shows in general that led this charge were, you know, Big Mouth, which is only, you know, 3 or 4 year old show, Central Park, which came out this year, and had Kristen Bell step down from her character. But then you run into this very interesting dilemma where you have shows like The Simpsons and Family Guy who, you know, are still running from years before this conversation started. And, you know, I think that they, you know, I think they took a very strong point by, you know, having Mike Henry step down from Cleveland, and, you know, having, you know, all the actors in The Simpsons step back from those characters. And it's sidebar, I would, you know, Connor specifically, I would recommend you look this up. There's a guy on Facebook who as soon as they announced they weren't going to have white actors playing characters of color on The Simpsons, he's been posting in all the Simpsons groups his Dr. Hibbert impression and his his up, like all the characters that need to be filled now, and he sounds
right.
fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so where where do we go? Like, where do we draw the line now going forward? Now that we've had this conversation between, well, this voice fits the character best versus it's insensitive to have this actor step into this role.
Like, I think, well, there's a two sides that you kind of have to address. You have to address the animation side and what they're actually depicting, and then the back end on who's the actual actor. And like I've been reading, and it seems like this idea that like it's very common for actors to voice multiple characters. So in this case, like you have a white person voicing multiple characters. Some of them are different ethnicities, some of them are different genders. But I think what the problem is that there isn't a level playing field for voice actors of, like POC voice actors. So like, you can have a black actor voice a white character, or have them voice a grandmother because they have a terrific voice. And it's kind of this idea that like, it's good that some of these actors and actresses are stepping back, and it's kind of this, it's a good move to kind of help address the problem and then to maybe open it up, because, and I've been reading like with voice acting, there's training involved. There's things that, the way they breathe and different way you can, use your voice. And like, if you don't have access to a certain kind of training, if you don't have access to certain auditions, then it's never going to become a level playing field. But if we kind of stop and like, let's pause, let's not give this to my friend who I like and I know they have a great voice, but let's try and get someone else in there, because in the past we haven't tried that hard. And I think that's a good start, because it would be ideal, I think, to get to this point where anyone of any race would be free to use their talents and to voice characters that they would never have played before, and that would be, that'd be a good thing. But we're not there yet, but we might as well start somewhere.
Well, kind of going off of that, well, one, same question for you, but to add on to that, like, I can't think of anything else besides The Simpsons that would fit into this bubble. But like, what are your thoughts on continuing shows who have established characters at this point, versus the new shows who should be again, not to make a black and white line in the sand, but new shows going forward probably should take this conversation and say,
exactly. I think new shows most likely, hopefully, will be more sensitive on the matter. And I people have been replaced on sitcoms now for 50 years. This is not the first. This just happens to be animated characters. However, like doesn't Aunt Viv get replaced in the middle of the Fresh Prince, and like the husband in Bewitched just gets completely. So like, it is a thing.
I mean,
it'll happen. It's a minor.
We can get used to it.
Where
exactly, like it's not a roadblock; it's a speed bump. It'll happen, and in the next season of Family Guy or The Simpsons, if the characters are not gone, then I'm sure they will find a worthy replacement, because there are plenty of talented, because then this isn't. It's just another example of somebody of a different race playing a thing. Because Phil Lamar is black and he does the voice of Samurai Jack, who is Japanese? ?
Yes.
But he's an incredibly talented voice actor, and I don't think he needs recasting because he has this like glorious voice. So like, and I don't think that's, and I have not watched Samurai Jack, so I don't really know too much about that. I'll cut myself off there on that point. But
it's so good.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Is it's like incredible. But yes, I think that these shows that have been insensitive in the past can acclimate themselves and recast these roles, or like we can get rid of Apu. Like, he's necessary. They need the Quickie Mart, I guess, in Springfield, but like, Is there a better way to do that now?
There is literally an entire song called "Who Needs the Quickie Mart."
Right.
And also there's like, and there's some like I understand like you have some of these characters, and like if I saw a Filipino grandmother, with the right accent in a show, like I might find that funny. I might find that like is a pretty close depiction to someone I know in real life, like not there are detrimental stereotypes, and there are things that like are just ethnic, and you can pull those things off if you do them with respect, or you come at it at like the right way.
You're not making fun of it for being what it is. You're sharing it. You're you're opening your heart and doing the thing rather than
or you just
doing it as a mockery of that particular culture.
Right. You're just making the world more colorful. And and it was another like he does a lot of voice acting, Dante Basco, who was Rufio in Hook.
Oh, word, yeah.
Right? And
okay. Yeah.
He's a Filipino American, and he was quoted pretty much saying like if I had to wait for all the Filipino American roles, I would not have a job. You know? So like you're forced as an actor to put on, in a lot of cases something that you are not, right? But like most of the time what actors try to do is to at least pay respect to those characters. You know? And that's why like if someone's depicting like, and like the Central Park characters, the Big Mouth characters, like they're like, I think they're both like biracial like characters,
and it was,
right?
I think
like the actresses were
Jenny
like
Slate. Yeah, Jenny Slate played Jenny Slate played it was a biracial
African American Jewish,
half black. Yeah, it was half black, half Jewish, and she said she was able to justify it for the 3 seasons, because she was Jewish, and then she just, didn't feel right about it. But I mean, going off topic a little bit, the nature of that show, what I want to see happen is I want that character to go through puberty and just have it be Nicole Byer next season, because I also, and what I think what these shows have done correctly in this instance is they have assured that the actors who are stepping back they still have a place on the show. Kristen Bell is still going to be a part of Central Park. Jenny Slate's still going to be part of Big Mouth. I just think I don't know at this. I think we need to continue having this conversation, and we need to really look at these. I don't know if there will never be an instance again in the future where a character a character has to or a character can't match 100% the actor. But I definitely think that those shows that make it a point to put those actors at the forefront should be commended for that.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think it's part of this whole kind of new discussion of normalizing learning new things, unlearning and relearning, and normalizing that idea of that, like normalizing, maybe acknowledging maybe your opinion was wrong, or that like you've done things that were wrong in your past. But like Jenny Slate, didn't feel comfortable. She stepped down, and they're recasting it. So like, yes, I think that is the right thing to do, and like that's an important step to take in the way that things are unfolding. I had another point. It's gone now. I'm so sorry.
It'll come back.
But as long as we start, and I think that's one of the most important things, is start by creating the opportunities. Start by like writing more characters so that you can fill them with more POC roles, or write more characters that that minorities want to be. Like they don't want to get the job to play like the bit character. They don't want to play the Apu. They want to play like these normal kind of characters, and they just have to be written. Like write them. Make it more inclusive, and then it just kind of will open up opportunities.
Yeah, and I think part
for
of
me the biggest
again, like Apu was created 35 years ago. Apu was created, so it's like, of course he wasn't sensitive then, because like he
a bit old
That was
hat
back at
at
a
this
time when
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Very old hat. It's kind of played out. The Simpsons is great, but
Well,
it's
yeah.
very long in the tooth at this point.
Well,
But
and again, I think the thing with the Simpsons is they were not specifically casting, let's have a white guy play the Indian character. They were
yeah,
a cast of 6 people that had to come up with 500 characters,
Right.
and
yeah. And Hank
a friend
Azaria
of
is an
mine,
incredibly talented voice actor. Like
yeah,
his ability to create these like so distinct and so outlandish characters, like
mhm,
you look beyond his career, The Simpsons. It's like, right, he was Bartok the Bat in
yeah.
Anastasia, and he's Agador Spartacus, and he's so incredibly talented. Helen Hunt is a lucky lady, tell you what. We're not
Um,
worthy
Boy.
of him.
and one, to kind of like, put a bow on Apu, I
Yeah.
for year, I mean, I love the Simpsons is one of the most responsible pieces of media for shaping my psyche to the way it is. And I look back very, very fondly, even on the Apu episodes. And for the longest time, when the controversy first really came to the public conversation, my initial instinct was to say, like, well, they present him as, a family man and a business owner, and they do this. And, a friend of mine even made the argument once that, it it wasn't it's an interesting extra layer, because it's not just let's have a white guy do the Indian voice. It's, that archetype that, the convenience store owner was an established, you know, character
That's
in
a 90s
pop
Mhm.
trope,
culture
without a
in
doubt, right?
1990s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. We've
And,
all seen like Encino Man. Like you watch any movie from the
yeah,
90s, and the 7-Eleven, the
yeah,
store owner is going to be most likely Indian. It's like, yes,
yeah.
that was a
Mhm.
thing.
And the other side of the coin to that is, one, I am white. I cannot
Hmm.
necessarily, like, I am not the judge on what is offensive to other, just like
Yeah,
straight people cannot be the judge on, what is offensive to me. I have
yeah.
to acknowledge, I had to grow and acknowledge the fact that,
I was ready to talk about Matthew McConaughey in the Texas Buyers Dollars Club. What's that movie called? The Texas Buyers Dollars? That's like,
That sounds
just
about right.
because he
Yeah.
was a straight man playing a gay man with AIDS doesn't mean he deserves an Academy Award. Like, just
Mhm.
like that kind of thing is no longer bait for,
yeah.
oh, they're so talented because they can play gay. It's like, no, a gay actor could have done that. There are plenty of gay actors who
Mhm.
have that in their range to do so.
Sidebar, at some point,
Do
a
better.
discussion is on deck, and I feel like I want you in it, of the pros and cons of having non-gay actors or non-LGBT actors play LGBT characters, but we'll save
Yeah,
that
and
for
again, that's
the
something
next
that I think
episode.
is really kind of like it's
Yeah.
flipped over in the last 20 years of like, right,
Mhm.
it was
But
a
no,
big deal.
I think to really put a bow in the whole Apu thing, it's, you can say what you will about the character, you can say that the intention was not malicious, but I can't remember the actor. I don't think it was Hari Kondabolu, but it was another Indian American actor who said, he's like, I never personally found anything wrong with Apu, but I did know that every week on The Simpsons, whatever Apu said was what students were going to quote back to me on the schoolyard. And,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
one of those things where you have to look at it, and it's like, are, you know, should we erase the 30 years of The Simpsons that had Hank Azaria as Apu? I would argue no. But going forward, I think it's a very healthy conversation to say, you know what, we approach. I think the biggest thing is you have to look at the intention versus the effect. Um, and I think, the intention is not a pass for, if something is problematic. They think it still needs to be addressed. But I think we can, I think we can forgive creators who look at old work and say, you know what, my thoughts on this have evolved. I did not think that at the time of creating this piece of art that this was problematic, but now that it's been brought to my attention, I see that it is, and I'm addressing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Well, I think that seems like a great place to kind of wrap for now. thank you guys so much for coming on. This is normally where I would ask if you have anything to plug coming up, but until I did hear possible, put air quotes on it, possible vaccine in November from the CDC.
Right, Pfizer said that
we'll
they're looking to, I think, like, certify it at the end of October. But I don't know. I don't think we need to be rushing back anytime soon.
No.
Right.
I just
sometimes it's good to take a creative
I want to
break.
perform, but I want to be safe.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's gonna look very different for a long time.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming on today. For anybody listening or watching, please continue to send us your work. We're hoping to get the our Elephant Ears reading series back up soon. So if you have anything to send to us, no matter what state it's in that you need feedback on, please send it to submissions@elephantroomproductions.org. Look at that. We got it on the screen now. It's all fancy.
Hello, this is Editing Robert coming to you from the future of this recording, but not far enough in the future for me to have made any more significant headway on my recording studio. Sorry about that. Interrupting my past self real quick, just to ask, hold off on the submissions for just a gooch. This episode was recorded a little bit ago, and since the recording, editing, and posting of this episode, we at Elephant Room Productions are in the process of restructuring the Ears series to go to the next chapter. And until we're done kind of working that out and when that's going to roll out, we are not accepting submissions at this time. It's going to be back up and running very, very soon, and we are very, very excited to read those plays again. But just hang tight, and there will be a big announcement from us coming up. Okay, back to the podcast.
But until then, thank you so much for either listening or watching. And until we meet again, this is Robert Jean Colecchio signing off. How do I get this shared?
Stay classy, Internet.
Bye now.
Bye, everybody.